Screams. A struggle. The thud of something heavy hitting the ground. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I wasn't even supposed to be there. But that night, as I walked toward my car, parked beside the old white van, I saw it. A shape. Something, someone being dragged into the shadows. A muffled cry, a violent scuffle. And then silence. My breath caught in my throat. My hands clenched the car keys so tightly they dug into my palm. I should have turned back. I should have run. But then the van's back doors swung open, and what I saw inside made my stomach lurch. It was a cage. A metal cage. And inside it, hey, a voice thundered behind me. I spun around. A man, dressed in dark clothing, his face half hidden in the dim glow of the parking lot lights, took a step toward me. His eyes, cold, calculating, locked onto mine. Wrong place, wrong time, kid. Before I could react, he lunged. I was late. Again. My boss was going to kill me. I sped into the nearly full parking lot of my local grocery store, cursing under my breath. There were barely any spots left, and the only available one was next to an old, beat-up white van parked near the back. I hesitated. Something about it made my skin crawl. The way its windows were covered with newspaper, the faded paint, the dented back doors that looked like they'd been forced open one too many times. But I was in a rush, and it was just a van, right? I pulled into the spot, grabbed my list, and hopped out, barely giving the vehicle another glance. But if I had looked, really looked, I might have noticed the smudges on the back door. Smudges that looked an awful lot like handprints. I might have noticed the faint scratching noises coming from inside. I might have run. Instead, I went inside, completely unaware that parking next to that van was the worst mistake of my life. I should have known something was off the moment I walked into the store. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a dull glow on the mostly empty aisles. It was late, past 10 p.m., and only a handful of people were inside. An elderly woman squinting at a can of soup, a tired-looking cashier scanning items, and a man in a hoodie loitering near the entrance. I grabbed a basket and moved quickly. Bread, almond milk, bananas, just the essentials. But as I reached for a carton of eggs, I felt it. Someone was watching me. You know that weird, prickly feeling on the back of your neck? That sense that someone's eyes are boring into you. Even if you can't see them? That's exactly what I felt. I turned my head slightly and caught a glimpse of movement in my peripheral vision. It was the man in the hoodie. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't even pretending to browse. He was standing at the end of the aisle, his head slightly tilted, staring at me. I swallowed hard and forced myself to act normal. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe he was just waiting for someone. But as I moved to the next aisle, so did he. My heart started pounding. I picked up my pace. He did too. By the time I reached the self-checkout, I was practically throwing items onto the scanner. The moment I grabbed my receipt, I heard footsteps, quick, purposeful, closing in behind me. And then, hey kid, I nearly jumped out of my skin. It wasn't the man in the hoodie. It was the old security guard, stationed near the door. His weathered face was tight with concern. "You drove here alone?" he asked, his voice low. I said, shifting uncomfortably. "Why?" He glanced past me, toward the parking lot. His jaw clenched. "Where'd you park?" I frowned. Near the back, next to a white van." His voice turned sharp. Chills ran down my spine. "Yes," I whispered. His face darkened. "Listen to me carefully," he said. "Do not go to your car alone. That van, it's been sitting there for days. Different drivers. No plates. People park next to it. And sometimes," he hesitated, "sometimes they don't come back." My stomach twisted. I turned toward the glass doors, staring at my car. The van was still there, waiting. I should have listened. I should have asked for help. But instead, I did something incredibly, incredibly stupid. I decided to check it out for myself. I don't know what possessed me to walk toward that van. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was stupidity. Maybe it was that tiny voice in my head whispering, "It's just a van. You're overreacting." But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. The parking lot was eerily quiet. A single flickering street lamp cast long shadows across the pavement. My car sat just a few feet away from the van, its headlights reflecting off the van's dirty, dented surface. I slowed my steps, glancing around. No sign of the man in the hoodie. No sign of anyone, really. For a moment, I considered just getting in my car and driving away. But then I noticed something. The van's back door. It was slightly ajar. My heart pounded. I swallowed hard, taking a cautious step forward. My breath felt heavy, my pulse hammering in my ears. Every logical part of my brain screamed at me to leave. But my curiosity, my need to know, won. I reached out. The metal handle was cold under my fingers. Slowly, carefully, I pulled the door open an inch wider. And that's when I saw it. A hand. A pale, trembling hand reaching out from the darkness inside. I gasped, stumbling back. The hand twitched, fingers curling weakly. A quiet, ragged voice whispered from within. "Help me." My blood ran cold. There was someone inside. Someone trapped. I had to do something. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped it. But before I could dial 911, something shifted behind me. A shadow, a presence, and then a cloth, rough and chemical-soaked, clamped over my mouth. I struggled, kicked, clawed at the hands gripping me. But the world around me blurred, my vision swimming. My limbs felt heavy, my strength slipping away. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me whole. The van's doors closing shut. Cold. That was the first thing I felt when I woke up. The second was pain. A dull, throbbing ache in my head, spreading down to my neck. My body felt heavy, sluggish, like I was moving through thick syrup. Panic rushed in. My eyes flew open. Darkness. For a split second, I thought I had gone blind. But then, as my vision adjusted, I saw the faintest sliver of light seeping through cracks in the metal walls. I wasn't outside anymore. I was inside the van, and I wasn't alone. Something shifted near me. A ragged breath. A quiet sob. I turned my head, my movements sluggish and uncoordinated. A girl, maybe a year or two younger than me, was huddled in the corner, her wrists bound, her face streaked with tears. She wasn't the only one. In the dim light, I made out two more people crammed into the van with me. A boy, no older than 14, curled up in the opposite corner, his arms wrapped around his knees. And another girl, unconscious, lying flat on the cold metal floor. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just some random kidnapping. This was organized. I fought against the grogginess, trying to sit up, but my hands were tied behind my back. A rough rope dug into my wrists. My ankles, too. Panic surged. I twisted, struggling against the restraints, but the more I fought, the tighter they seemed to get. My breath came in short, ragged gasps. The girl in the corner sniffled. "They drugged you," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't fight too hard. It makes the dizziness worse." Drugged. That explained why my limbs felt like lead. Where? I swallowed, my throat dry as sandpaper. "Where are they taking us?" She shuddered. "I don't know." But she hesitated, glancing toward the van's front. I followed her gaze. There was a small window separating the cargo area from the driver's seat. Two men sat in the front. Their faces were hidden, but their voices, low, murmuring in hushed tones, were sharp. I strained to listen. This one put up a fight. A deep chuckle. "Doesn't matter. The buyer won't care." My blood turned to ice. Buyer? They weren't just kidnapping people. They were selling them. I felt bile rise in my throat. This wasn't some ransom scheme. This wasn't some random psycho grabbing victims off the street. This was human trafficking, and I was the next product on the list. My pulse pounded so hard I thought my heart might explode. I had to get out. I had to. The van slowed. Then it stopped. Footsteps. A door creaked open. And then the worst sound imaginable. The click of a lock. They were coming. For me. You won't believe what happens next. The lock clicked. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. My breathing turned shallow. My body screamed at me to move, to hide, to do something, but where could I go? I was tied up, trapped in the back of a van, and the people who put me here were just outside. The girl beside me stiffened, her eyes wide with terror. The boy in the corner held his breath. The unconscious girl still hadn't moved. Then, the van doors swung open. A rush of cold air hit me, carrying the scent of damp earth and gasoline. The world outside was pitch black, with only the faint glow of headlights illuminating the dirt road beneath us. Two men stood in the open doorway. One of them was tall, broad-shouldered, with a thick beard and a scar running down his cheek. The other was thinner, wiry, his face half hidden under the shadow of a baseball cap. The bearded man stepped forward, his boots crunching against the gravel. "All right," he muttered, scanning us like we were livestock in auction. "Time to move." The wiry man climbed inside and grabbed the unconscious girl by the arms. He hauled her out of the van like she weighed nothing, her head lolling to the side. My stomach twisted. They were taking us one by one. I glanced at the girl beside me. Her hands were shaking, her lips trembling as she pressed herself against the metal wall. I had to think. Fast. The bearded man pointed at me. "You. Next." No. Panic surged through my veins like wildfire. I struggled against my restraints, but the rope only burned deeper into my wrists. The wiry man grabbed my ankle. His grip was ice cold. I kicked. Hard. He grunted, stumbling back. The bearded man scowled. "Got a fighter, huh?" He stepped inside the van, towering over me. Then, a thud. Something heavy hit the side of the van. All three of us froze. Another thud. It came from outside. A sharp noise, like the crack of a branch. Then silence. The bearded man exchanged a glance with his partner. He stepped out of the van, peering into the darkness. What the hell was that? Silence. Then, a scream. A man's scream, followed by a wet, sickening crunch. The wiry man tensed. "Dan," he called out. No answer, just the sound of something heavy being dragged across the dirt. The wiry man cursed under his breath, reaching into his jacket. He pulled out a knife, gripping it tightly. Then, with one last glare at us, he jumped out of the van. The doors swung shut behind him. We were alone. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then, in a whisper, the girl beside me said, "Something's out there. Things are about to take a terrifying turn." The silence outside the van was worse than the screams. I strained to hear something, anything, but all I got was the heavy pounding of my own heartbeat. The girl beside me swallowed hard. What do you think is out there?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. The wiry man, our kidnapper, had been armed. He was dangerous, but whatever was lurking in the darkness had made him leave us behind. That meant one of two things. Either he was going to come back any second, or he wasn't coming back at all. Then, a rustling sound. Something moving. Close. The girl beside me whimpered. The boy in the corner pressed himself against the van wall, his eyes wide with terror. Footsteps. Slow. Crunching over gravel. My breath caught in my throat. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it was just the wiry man returning, that this nightmare would continue predictably, but deep down I knew. This was something else. The footsteps stopped. Right outside the van doors. A long, excruciating pause. Then, a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks against the metal. I stopped breathing. The girl beside me bit her lip so hard I thought she'd start bleeding. The van door handle rattled. My stomach dropped. Whoever, or whatever, was outside was trying to get in. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, silence. I didn't move. None of us did. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Then, a scream. Not a human one. It was distorted, wrong, like something being strangled underwater. It echoed through the night, and I swear I felt it vibrate through my bones. The boy in the corner whimpered. The girl beside me clamped a shaking hand over her mouth. And then, footsteps again. But this time they were running. Away. Whatever had been outside, it was gone. I let out a shaky breath. But just as relief started to set in, something new took its place. Dread, because if whatever was out there had just left, what had it been running from? The silence stretched. Thick, suffocating. None of us dared to move, let alone speak. Whatever had been outside was gone, but that didn't make us any safer. If anything, it made things worse. I tugged against the ropes binding my wrists, my breath coming in short gasps. "We have to get out of here," I whispered. The boy in the corner shook his head violently. "No, we stay. If we go out there, he hesitated. "We'll see it." A shiver ran down my spine. The girl beside me wasn't listening. She twisted her hands, testing her restraints. I think mine are loosening, she murmured. If I can just... The van shifted. We froze. The vehicle tilted slightly, like something heavy had just landed on it. My stomach nodded. The girl beside me let out a shaky breath. Please tell me that was the wind. I didn't answer, because I knew it wasn't. Then, a groan of metal. Slow, prolonged, like something was crawling on top of the van. The boy in the corner let out a quiet sob. The girl beside me shook harder. What do we do? She mouthed. I didn't know. The van creaked again. A shadow passed over the small cracks of moonlight filtering in through the seams of the doors. It was right above us. I could hear it breathing, deep, raspy, like lungs filled with something thick and wrong. A single thought ran through my mind. We are not alone. Then, without warning, the roof buckled inward. Something slammed down on top of the van with a force that rattled my teeth. The girl beside me screamed. The boy in the corner clamped his hands over his ears. Then, the van's doors ripped open. The van doors ripped open, metal groaning as they were wrenched from their hinges. A rush of icy air flooded inside. I could barely see, just shifting shadows, a towering shape silhouetted against the moonlight. And then, it moved. A long, bony limb reached into the van. The fingers, no claws, curled, scraping against the metal floor. The girl beside me let out a strangled sob. The boy in the corner whimpered. I couldn't breathe. Then, the thing stepped forward, and for the first time I saw it fully. It was tall, taller than any human should be. Its limbs were too long, its joints bending at unnatural angles. Its skin, if you could call it that, was stretched tight over its bones, mottled gray and slick with something dark. And its face, oh God, it didn't have one. Where its eyes should have been, there was nothing but smooth, featureless skin. No mouth, no nose, just a hollow, gaping absence where a face should be. But it knew we were here. It turned its head slightly, as if listening. Then, it took a step inside the van. The girl beside me screamed. The thing snapped toward her, its faceless head jerking in her direction. It heard her. It hunts by sound. My pulse pounded. If we made any noise, any at all, it would find us. The girl clamped a shaking hand over her mouth, her body trembling so hard I thought she'd pass out. The boy in the corner was frozen, his eyes squeezed shut. The thing moved closer. Slowly, deliberately. It was sniffing the air. It can't see us, but it knows we're here. I pressed myself against the cold metal floor, barely daring to breathe. The thing's claws scraped the van walls. It turned toward the unconscious girl lying beside us. It reached for her. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. Then, it stopped. Its head snapped upward, facing the forest beyond the road. For a moment, it was still, listening. Then, without warning, it lurched out of the van and sprinted into the darkness. I sucked in a shaky breath, my entire body trembling. The girl beside me whispered, "WH, where is it going?" I swallowed hard. Whatever had scared our kidnappers had just scared it too. For a long moment, none of us moved. The thing, the faceless creature, had just sprinted into the darkness, abandoning us without hesitation. That should have been a relief. But it wasn't, because if that thing was running, it meant something worse was out there. Something even it didn't want to face. The girl beside me wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "What do we do?" she whispered. I didn't know. The boy in the corner gulped. We should run before it comes back. He was right. Whatever was happening, we couldn't stay in this van. I yanked at my restraints, my wrists burning as the rope dug into my skin. The girl beside me wiggled hers, her fingers shaking. Then, a crash in the woods. My head snapped up. It wasn't just a sound. It was something big moving through the trees. Branches snapped like twigs. Then, a deep, guttural growl. It wasn't human. It wasn't even animal. It was something else. Something that made my stomach twist with pure, raw terror. The girl beside me whimpered. "Oh God, what is that?" I pulled harder at my ropes. "We have to move. Now." The unconscious girl beside me stirred, her eyelids fluttering. She was waking up. The boy in the corner bit his lip. "But we don't even know where we are." I didn't care. Staying meant death. I managed to free one wrist, the rope loosening just enough for me to wiggle my hand out. My skin was raw, red lines digging deep into my flesh, but I ignored the pain. I reached for my ankles, undoing the tight knots. My fingers fumbled. Come on, come on. The thing in the woods growled again. Louder, closer. Then, a scream. Not human, not the faceless thing, but something else. A high-pitched, shrieking wail that tore through the night air, making my ears ring. Then, silence. A deep, wet crunch. And then, something else started running toward the van. Fast. I ripped the last knot free and grabbed the girl beside me, yanking at her ropes. Move! We had seconds. We stumbled out of the van, the cold air hitting me like a slap. The boy scrambled after us. The unconscious girl groaned. I hesitated just for a second before grabbing her under the arms, dragging her with me. Then, the trees exploded open, and I saw it. A nightmare made flesh. I couldn't breathe. The thing, the beast that charged from the trees wasn't just a creature. It was a nightmare given form. Its body was massive, easily 3 times the size of a man. Muscles rippled beneath fur that was matted and bloodied, as though it had been in a constant, brutal fight for its life. Its head was crowned with jagged, sharp antlers, and its eyes, oh God, its eyes, glowed a sickly yellow, like 2 burning orbs in a sea of black. It was a predator, and we were its prey. I pulled the girl beside me, dragging her through the underbrush as the boy scrambled behind. The forest seemed to close in around us, the trees tall and oppressive. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat drowning out the sound of our frantic footsteps. Behind us, a roar. It was so loud, I felt the ground tremble beneath me. The beast was gaining on us. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The trees were getting denser, their branches clawing at our faces, but I pushed forward, desperation fueling my every step. The boy behind me was panting, his breath sharp and ragged. And then, just when I thought we might have a chance, a screech, a shattering sound. I turned, just in time to see the girl who had been unconscious go flying through the air. The beast had snatched her, its claws sinking deep into her chest, lifting her off the ground like she weighed nothing. Her scream echoed through the night. I couldn't think, I just ran. But the boy wasn't as fast. I heard him cry out as the beast twisted its head, its mouth opening wide, showing rows of jagged teeth before it lunged. I couldn't look. I couldn't bear to watch. Tears stung my eyes, but I forced them away. The air was thick with the smell of blood and fear. The world seemed to slow down, and for a second, I thought maybe I was dreaming. But then, a crash, and then silence. It wasn't the beast that had made the noise. It was something else. A sound, a crackling, shifting noise, came from behind the trees. And then I saw it. A figure. A man I knew. It was him, the wiry kidnapper. But he wasn't alone. 2 others stood beside him. They were just as twisted, and they were coming for us. I couldn't process what I was seeing. The wiry kidnapper, the one who had taken us, was standing just a few feet away, his eyes locked onto me with an expression of cold, calculated indifference. But the others, they were even worse. 2 men, dressed in torn, mismatched clothes, their faces obscured by masks that looked like something out of a nightmare. One of them was holding a long, rusted blade in his hand, the other a wooden staff, wrapped in barbed wire. Their bodies were covered in scars, and they didn't look human anymore. Not completely. They weren't just hunters. They were monsters in their own right. The wiry man spoke, his voice low and grim. You shouldn't have come here. I didn't understand. What do you want from us? I shouted, my voice shaky with fear. The man's eyes flickered toward the woods where the beast had been. We were hunting something, but it seems, he trailed off, looking at the other 2 hunters. The prey became the predator. The hunter with the blade let out a low, unsettling chuckle. It knows. It's smarter than we gave it credit for. The last hunter, the one holding the barbed wire staff, glanced at the trees nervously. We've lost control. That thing's too dangerous now. The man with the rusted blade turned to me, his gaze piercing. The ground shook again, this time more violently. The leaves rustled, the trees groaning under the weight of whatever was charging through the forest. I could hear it now, louder, closer. The creature, the beast, was almost upon us. The three hunters, no longer men, but desperate, panicked beings, gripped their weapons tightly, their bodies trembling as they stared into the trees. And then, through the shadows, it appeared, the beast, its glowing eyes pierced through the night, followed by the shape of its towering form, muscles bulging under matted fur, its breath coming in heavy, ragged gasps. Its antlers scraped against the tree branches, the sound of cracking would filling the air. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but my legs were frozen. The three hunters stepped forward, their faces tense, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. But as the beast got closer, its roar deafening, its hunger palpable, something unexpected happened. The wiry man lifted his gun, not toward the beast, but toward us. "No!" I shouted, but it was too late. The bullet whizzed past my ear, grazing my cheek. One of the other hunters swiveled toward the wiry man, his face pale with shock. "What are you doing?" The wiry man's lips curled into a cold smile. "This was never about hunting the beast. This was always about you." The world seemed to stop. My heart pounded in my chest, too fast, too loud. The realization crashed over me like a tidal wave. We hadn't been brought here to escape the beast. We were bait. The wiry man turned to the others. "I told you we needed them. Now, we get rid of the competition." The two hunters, their faces pale, backed away slowly. The beast was closing in, its heavy footsteps now shaking the earth beneath us. It was mere seconds from reaching us. But the hunters didn't run. They stood there, motionless. And then, suddenly, a twisted laugh escaped the wiry man's lips. It wasn't the sound of someone who was trying to survive. It was the sound of someone who was in control. And then, as the beast roared and charged, the man shouted, "Let it kill them all. They're not the ones we need anymore." The two hunters looked confused for a split second, but before they could act, the beast struck. Its claws slashed through the air with terrifying speed, and one of the hunters, the one with the barbed wire staff, was torn apart in an instant. I screamed, covering my face as blood splattered across the forest floor. The wiry man didn't flinch. He just watched. I couldn't move. The beast was rampaging, destroying everything in its path. The remaining hunter took a few desperate steps backward, but he was too slow. The creature was too fast. It lunged, and within seconds, the man was gone. I could hear my breath, my heart racing, but I couldn't look away. The beast was feasting, its enormous form illuminated in the moonlight. It was like a nightmare, something out of a horror film. But then, the wiry man turned to me. Yep. He licked his lips, his eyes gleaming with a twisted kind of satisfaction. "You were never supposed to survive." I felt my knees go weak. He knew. He had always known. And then, a gunshot. The sound rang out through the forest, sharp and loud, and a wiry man jerked back, his eyes wide with shock. He crumpled to the ground, a blood-red stain spreading across his chest. I turned quickly. The girl, the unconscious one, was standing, and she was holding a gun. The sound of the gunshot still echoed in my ears as the wiry man crumpled to the forest floor, his body twitching before going still. The beast, distracted by the sudden violence, paused for a moment. It turned its head, its yellow eyes narrowing as it focused on the girl, now standing in front of me. My heart skipped a beat. She was awake. But what had happened to her? The girl, blood smeared across her face, stood with a shaky hand clutching a gun I hadn't seen before. Her eyes were wild, filled with fear and something darker, something colder. She stepped forward, her voice trembling as she spoke. "I'm sorry, but they had to die." I couldn't comprehend what she was saying. She had saved us, but she had killed. The beast, sensing its prey was no longer unguarded, took another step toward us, its massive body moving with terrifying speed. But the girl didn't flinch. She raised the gun, her hands shaking but steady enough. Her voice was a mere whisper, yet it seemed to carry through the night air. "Stay back." The beast growled in response, a low rumbling that shook the very ground beneath us. It was getting closer, but the girl didn't waver. I took a step toward her, fear filling my chest. You killed them. Why did you? But she cut me off, her eyes wide and distant. You don't understand. You never understood what they were doing. She paused, her breath quick and shallow. They weren't hunting. They were feeding. And we were the bait. Her words hit me like a slap. The whole time we were running, trying to survive, we had been pawns. The hunters weren't after the beast. They were after us. They had orchestrated everything. But why? The beast roared again, and the girl flinched but held her ground. I'm sorry. I couldn't let them finish it. She wiped a tear away, her voice steadying. I know what they wanted, what they were willing to do to us. I didn't understand. None of it made sense. But then, she stepped forward. And now, it's my turn to stop it. Without another word, she pulled the trigger. The sound of the shot rang out. The beast's roar turned into a sickening screech as it staggered back, its massive body twisting and jerking as it struggled to maintain its balance. The girl's aim was precise, but the beast wasn't going down that easily. It bellowed, its eyes burning with rage, and charged again, faster this time. Get down, she screamed. I dove to the ground, the beast's claws grazing my back as it passed. I could feel its heat, its fury, as it tore past us. The girl fired again. This time, the shot hit its target, the beast's left side, sending it reeling backward, but it wasn't enough to stop it. It was still coming. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. The girl was still holding the gun, but I could see the exhaustion in her face. She was losing strength, and with each passing moment, the beast was getting closer. I grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the trees. We have to run. She resisted for a moment, but then nodded, her face pale. It's too late. We couldn't outrun the beast. But maybe, just maybe, we could outsmart it. I scanned the forest, searching for anything that could help. The girl looked at me, her eyes filled with desperation. We need a plan. Now. I glanced at the gun in her hand. We need to finish this. The beast was closer now, its shadow looming over us. I had one chance, one shot, before it was all over. I turned to the girl. Can you hold it off for just a few more seconds? She nodded. I'll try. I took a deep breath and reached into the pocket of my jacket, pulling out the one thing I hadn't dared to use before, the flare gun. It was a long shot, but it was the only chance we had left. On three, I whispered. 1, 2, 3. I aimed the flare gun at the beast's eyes, pulling the trigger. The bright flash of light illuminated the dark forest, and for a split second, everything stopped. Then, the beast screamed, a sound of pure agony, and it fell. For a moment, everything went silent. The flare burst through the air, its blinding light lighting up the entire forest. The beast howled, its massive form jerking violently, its eyes blinded by the intense glow. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest, unable to move as the creature staggered back, disoriented. The flare had hit its mark, its face twisted in pain, but it wasn't finished yet. It roared again, a sound that shook the trees around us, and I realized that we were running out of time. The girl, her body trembling, lowered the gun. Her hand was slick with sweat. We don't have much time, she whispered. It'll come back for us, harder. I nodded, panic rising in my throat. I looked around the forest, trying to think of some escape, but the beast was relentless. We had one shot. Is there another way to kill it? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't respond right away. Her eyes were focused on the beast, which was recovering, its eyes glinting with fury in the flare's light. I don't know, she said, voice cracking. This thing isn't like anything I've ever seen before. It's not just an animal. What do you mean? I demanded. She hesitated, her face pale in the dim light of the flare. It's a curse. It's not just a creature. It's something worse. The men we were running from, they were here because of it. They knew they had to stop it, or would destroy everything. The weight of her words hung in the air between us. The hunters weren't just after the beast. They were trying to stop the curse. The flare was beginning to burn out, its light flickering. The beast was closing in again, its bloodshot eyes locking onto us as it regained its footing. What are we supposed to do? I asked, fear creeping into my voice. We can't outrun it. We can't shoot it down. The girl's hands trembled as she reached in her jacket and pulled out something small, metallic, and strange. It was a pendant shaped like an ancient symbol. "What is that?" I asked, unable to hide my confusion. "It's a key," she said, her voice calm but filled with desperation. "A key to stop it." I stared at the pendant, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "How does that work?" Her eyes met mine, a flicker of determination in them. "It's a ritual. The hunters, they were supposed to perform it. They were going to trap it, contain it. But when they found out I knew," she trailed off. "They were never meant to succeed." The beast growled, its form closing in on us once again. The ground trembled as it charged forward. "Tell me what to do," I screamed. "Now," she shouted. "We need to get to the center of the forest. There's a clearing. It's the only place where the ritual can work." I didn't wait for more. Grabbing her arm, I pulled her toward the trees, running as fast as I could. The beast was still coming, faster than ever. Its rage was palpable. I could hear its claws scraping against the ground behind us. "Hurry," she shouted. We were close now, the clearing just ahead, but the creature wasn't far behind. It was so close I could hear its breathing, its growls growing louder with each step. And then, a sharp, searing pain. The beast's claw slashed across my back, sending me crashing to the ground. I gasped for air, the world spinning around me. The girl screamed, running back to help me. But as she reached me, the beast lunged. The girl held the pendant high above her head, chanting words I couldn't understand. The air grew cold, the forest around us stilling. The beast's movements slowed, as if caught in an invisible web. It roared, but its strength was waning. I could barely see, my vision fading in and out, but I could hear the beast's frantic struggles. It was dying. The curse was lifting. "It's working," the girl cried. But then, the pendant cracked. A sound like thunder rumbled through the forest, and the beast, with one last horrifying screech, collapsed. The ground shook beneath us, and I felt everything go black. I woke up in darkness, the heavy weight of unconsciousness lifting like fog from my mind. My head throbbed painfully, and the scent of smoke lingered in the air. For a moment, I wasn't sure where I was. But then the memories flooded back. The beast, the girl, the ritual, the clearing. I shot up, panic setting in as I realized that everything was still eerily silent. The world around me was still, but I could feel the heaviness in the air, the tension that hadn't quite lifted. I tried to stand but stumbled, my legs weak from the pain and exhaustion. My back screamed as I moved. The gash from the beast's claws, a burning reminder of how close we had come to losing everything. But then I saw her, the girl. She was kneeling in the clearing, her hands gripping the cracked pendant. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with both relief and exhaustion, and she was staring at the fallen beast. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. The creature, the curse, lay unmoving, its massive body crumpled on the ground, no longer the terrifying force it had been. It was dead. I took a shaky step toward her, my voice hoarse. "Is it over?" She didn't look up at first. Her fingers trembled as they ran over the pendant, still clasped in her hands. "It should be," she said softly. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. "But the curse, it's gone. The beast is really—" She nodded slowly, the weight of everything finally hitting her. "It's over. The curse is broken." Relief flooded through me like a rushing wave. I almost collapsed in that moment, but the thought of the other hunters, the ones who had orchestrated this, flashed in my mind. "What about them?" I asked. "The hunters, the men who were chasing us." She didn't respond immediately, her gaze shifting to the still body of the creature. They weren't just hunting for the beast," she said quietly. "They were hunting for the curse, trying to contain it. But they didn't know the full extent of what they were dealing with." I nodded, trying to understand the depth of what had happened. "And you? What's your role in all this?" She finally looked up at me, her eyes filled with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Guilt, maybe, or regret. I wasn't supposed to survive. I wasn't supposed to stop it. But I had to. Her voice cracked, and I could see the burden she had been carrying. The pain of knowing that so many lives had been lost because of this cursed creature. I sat down beside her, careful not to touch her too suddenly. "You did the right thing," She didn't respond. Instead, she stared at the beast's body, as if waiting for something to happen. The minutes stretched on, and the air felt thick with anticipation. And then, the earth trembled again. At first, it was barely noticeable, a small vibration underfoot. But then it grew stronger, and the ground shook. I could feel my heart race again. "What's happening?" I gasped. The girl's face was filled with disbelief. "It's not over," she whispered. Before I could ask what she meant, the beast's body began to move. It twitched, the massive muscles under its skin jerking as though they were still alive. A low growl vibrated from its chest. I stumbled backward, my heart racing. How is this possible? The girl's voice was barely audible. "It's not just a beast. The curse, it was never fully contained." I looked back at the beast, its eyes flickering open, glowing faintly in the dim light of the forest. It rose from the ground, its massive form towering over us once more. And then I heard it, the voice in my mind. It wasn't the beast's voice. It was something else, something far older, darker. It spoke. I could feel the words crawl across my skin like ice. "You cannot stop what has already begun." The girl gasped, her body frozen in shock. "No," she whispered. "It can't be. It was supposed to end." The beast, no, the curse, snarled, its body moving faster now. It was waking fully, and we were not prepared. I grabbed the girl's arm, trying to pull her away, but she yanked free. "We can't run." The beast's massive jaws snapped open, and I could feel the terror surge through me. But just as I thought it was over, there was a blinding flash of light. The ground beneath us cracked wide open, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe. The beast's scream was drowned out by the deafening sound of an explosion, and the cursed creature disappeared into the abyss. Everything went silent. We were alone now. I didn't know what happened next, but I knew one thing for sure. The curse was truly gone, and we had survived.